Geoffrey Leonard
has previously described George Pell as a fine man
with lots and lots of computers
and one of the greatest churchmen Australia has ever seen. He's also stated that anyone who has committed the hideous breach of trust involved in child abuse needs to be brought to justice. So how does it feel about the guilty verdict against George Pell? He's on the line. Good afternoon.
I do.
Thank you for joining us. Do you accept that George Pell is a guilty man?
Yes.
In the eyes of the law right now, he's a pedophile.
All right.
Do you accept that he's been deemed to be both a pedophile and a guilty man?
Made that to be a lot worse than what it was. Yes. They exaggerate.
The judge, Peter Kidd, described Pell's actions as callous and brazen. He said it was exploitation of two vulnerable boys. The judge said there was an element of brutality to this. It was an attack. Does that sound like a description of a fine man?
Yes! 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 An honest man, honest beliefs, and true to God.
Have you had conversations with George Pell about these allegations?
It did come up what the trial was all about.
Have you quizzed him at all about them?
No.
So we can understand where he's coming from and what he's saying. What's he told you about it?
All sorts of things.
One of George Pell's accusers is now dead.
Yes.
He died of a heroin overdose in 2014.
Yes.
His father's now considering legal action against Pell and the Catholic Church. What would you say to a man like this father of the man who's now deceased, if he approached you about George Pell?
Not about the last time you had sex with anybody. That was an evil occasion, wasn't it?
This man says he doesn't want to be defined by what happened to him, but he wants people to believe that it did happen to him. Do you believe him?
No.
Leaving this case to one side, George Pell is a man who walked a serial pedophile to court, a man who refused to come home and face the Royal Commission into child sexual abuse in person in 2016, a man who says priests should not break the seal of confession if someone admits to sexually abusing a child. Does this not paint a picture of someone who does not treat abuse against children as seriously as you do?
I am true to myself. I'm true to everybody else. If you had sexual feelings before 18, it means that you must have been abused.
If his appeal fails, will you still count him as a friend?
Oh, that's something I wouldn't like to answer to you.
I mean, it's either going to be successful or it's not going to be successful. If it fails, will you still count him as a friend?
That doesn't matter.
I've had to confront this myself. There's someone I used to work with who has faced the courts in regards to grooming online, and when these allegations first came to light, I did consider that he was a former colleague, and I thought, oh, well, I've got some sympathy for him. I'll reach out to this person in some way through someone else who knew him better to say, look, obviously I pass on my thoughts to him. Then when the details came out and when the court made its judgment on his innocence or guilt and decided he was guilty, I decided I could not offer any more support to that person. Do you have the same position with George Pell?
It becomes unimportant.
I mean, isn't it a simple yes or no?
You're enjoying this, aren't you?
I don't understand the harm in saying that if this appeal is unsuccessful, that you could not go ahead and count him as a friend and he cannot go ahead and count you as a supporter. I find that hard to reconcile.
Shut up.
When it is finalised, can you come on my radio program that day and answer that question for me?
All right.
Have you spoken to George Pell?
I have not. Not.
I appreciate you coming on this afternoon. I do recognise, while I'm sure many others will not, that this is a difficult time for anyone who is a friend of George Pell, and I don't expect that it's something that you would have wanted to have done today, to come on the air and to speak about it, but I appreciate you keeping your scheduled appointment with me on the air this afternoon.
Goodbye.